welcome to the What Do You Want workshop. So I'm Jo from the Unstuck Club, and I am here for the next 50 minutes to help you work out what you really want from your career in telly. So if you haven't already, then grab yourself a pen and a piece of paper, because this workshop is going to be slightly interactive. Don't worry, it's not too interactive, but you'll get the most out of it if you've got a pen and paper handy, and also if you're prepared to go on camera and get into pairs later on in the workshop. So before I begin, I just wanted to kind of welcome everyone who's new to RTS Futures sessions. So RTS Futures holds free monthly events that cover a wide range of topics. I'm obviously looking after this one, and my background is I started my career in marketing, which was roughly about 10 years ago, and that went into a career in marketing and events within the TV industry, and that's where I've been for the last kind of roughly 7 years. So in lockdown, I retrained as a life coach, and I found that I started to enjoy helping other people to work out what they wanted from their careers, more than I enjoyed sort of trying to climb that ladder myself. So as a result, I set up the Unstuck Club in order to help people work that out for themselves. So this next 50 minutes is going to be divided into two sections. The first section is working out what you actually want and help giving you the tools to work out what it is you actually want. And the second section is overcoming mindset obstacles. Oops, sorry, I flicked on there. Overcoming mindset obstacles in order to be able to get to what you want. So first of all, can everyone hear and see me okay? I'll kind of assume that silence is a good sign, but if you can't see or hear me, then let me know. So looking at the first, thank you, thumbs up, that's nice. So looking at the first half of this workshop, what do you want? It is highly likely that if you've signed up to this workshop, this is an internal dialogue that goes through your head when you're thinking about your career. So it might be that you've recently graduated and you're not sure what direction to go in. It might be that you've worked hard kind of climbing the career ladder so far, and you're not sure whether or not that direction that you've started is where you want to carry on going. Or it might be that you feel like you've fallen into a career path and you're not sure whether or not this is the path you want to continue down, or whether or not you want to go down a slightly different route. So there are going to be lots of different people with lots of different reasons that they feel stuck at the moment. But the premise to working out what it is that you want is quite similar. So often when we don't know what we want out of our careers, the cycle looks something like this. So we tend to feel stuck and we then look externally. So it might be that we look at different jobs that are out there. It might be that we speak to different people within the industry, find out more about their experience. It might be that we research different companies within the industry to kind of find out a bit more about what they get up to. In looking externally, we then tend to get the answers that we need that helps us go on and set our career goals. Often what happens then is we go on, we hit those goals and we're really happy with where we are, everything's great. Or the slightly more likely turn of events is that we set our career goals and either we don't quite hit them, so something isn't quite working for us, that means we're not quite getting to where we want to be, or we hit them and once we get there, it doesn't quite feel like it's actually what we wanted and there's something that feels missing. So what we need to do if we're in this cycle is to add in another stage, which is to look internally. And that's what the first half of this workshop is about. It's about helping you to be able to look internally at what you actually want in order to be able to look externally, get the answers and set career goals that will be meaningful goals that will help you through the rest of your career as you climb that ladder. One key thing when it comes to looking internally that we don't do enough is we don't spend time on it. So we spend more time writing our shopping list than we do thinking about how we actually want to spend our careers. So the first thing that I'm going to ask all of you to do, and I'm going to give you about 1 minute to do so, is to go into your diaries and to find 45 minutes over the next week where you can dedicate time to thinking about what is it that you actually want. dedicate time to kind of going back through everything that you learned today, and to really sit there and think about what it is that you want, and kind of complete any exercises that we've started today. So I'll just give another 30 seconds to give you all time to go and have a look in your diary and find that 45-minute slot. If, as I say this, you're thinking there is no way I have 45 minutes, then try and just find 5 minutes, even if that 5 minutes is 5 minutes in your diary to remind you to put in 45 minutes later down the line. So when it comes to the first big question, so what do you want and how do we work out what we want? There are loads of different elements at play. However, two of the major ones are finding out what our core values are and finding out what our why is. So when we talk about core values are our fundamental beliefs. They're the centre of our personality. They're what make us who we are. They're what drives our decisions, and they can explain why we feel happy in certain areas of our lives and not in others. And we're more likely to achieve our goals and feel happy in our careers if we live by our core values. So here are some examples. So if you have a core value of stability or security, then you might find working on commission-based pay more stressful than someone who values risk and reward. Or if you have a core value of flexibility, freedom, or trust, and you're told to work from the office 24/7, then it's likely that this is going to frustrate you a lot more than someone who has a core value of something like connection, communication, or involvement. And specifically when looking at our career goals, if you have a core value of something like stability or security, then having a goal to launch your own company might not quite resonate with you. And on the other hand, if you have a core value of connection or leadership, then a goal to lead a team is likely to feel right to you. That's not to say that that you can't do these things. So, you could have a core value of stability and security and still want to launch your own company, and that's great. It would just be about finding out how can you make sure that you launch a company in a way that gives you security and in a way that makes you feel like you've got stability as you kind of start your own company. So this brings us on to exercise 1, where you'll need your pen and paper. If you don't have a pen and paper to hand, then the notes in your phone will do just fine. I'm about to ask you 3 questions to help you start to think about what your core values are. I'm not going to ask anyone to share any of their answers. So it's so important that you are as open and honest with yourself as possible, because you're not going to have to share any of this information. So just be completely honest with all your answers. So the first question is, what has made you the most proud over the last 5 years? And as you're answering this, I want you to kind of dig a little deeper. So it might be really easy to automatically put when I graduated or when I got a promotion. But actually, whilst I'm sure you were very proud when you graduated, it might be that you're more proud of yourself for putting yourself out there in Freshers Week and trying to make friends, or something like that. So really sort of try and think what moments made you the most proud of yourself over the last 5 years. Put down as many as you'd like. I am just going to give you a minute or two to have a think about that before moving on to the next question. Okay, so the next question is, what moments have made you happiest over the last 5 years? And again, I want you to dig a little deeper and be a bit more specific. So it's very easy to say these kind of stereotypical moments of, when I was on holiday, but what was it about that holiday? Was it that you were with friends? Was it that you were kind of enjoying the calm of, the sea view, that kind of thing? Try to kind of just dig a little deeper to what's at the surface of your thoughts and what genuinely are the moments that have made you happiest over the last 5 years. And again, I'm just going to give you a minute or two to think about that. Okay, and then final question. Who in your life are you most envious of and why? And again, it's quite easy to kind of automatically think, oh, so and so, because they've got loads of money and they can just go off and do whatever they want. But really try to be more specific. What is it about that person that you feel envious of? Is it that they've got a lot of money, which means they can go traveling? Is it that it means, you know, they've got flexibility in their career? What is it that you are specifically most envious of? And again, you can put kind of one person or a couple more people down. This doesn't have to be as well, the answer to these questions, whilst this is career focused, this workshop, it doesn't have to be specific to your career, because at the moment we're just working out what your core values are, which will then kind of tie into your career later. So again, I'm just going to give you another minute to have a think about that one. Now I want you to kind of have a look at all 3 answers that you've written down so far, and just have a think. Do you notice any common themes in what you've written down? Are there themes of friendship, of personal growth, of having an impact, of leadership, of being brave and courageous? What kind of themes do you feel are coming up to you? And just sort of jot those notes down on a piece of paper as well. And now I've got a very long list here of potential values. So obviously there are loads more values than this, but this is a good starting point. So what I'd suggest you do now is have a look at this list and note down any words which jump out at you. So it might be that they kind of jump out at you on their own, or it might be that they tie in with one of the common themes that you've already written down. It might be that they tie in with one of the answers to one of the questions that you answered a minute ago. And just sort of, you know, highlight any words that you feel are jumping out at you. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to start to try to summarize 3 to 5 core values. One thing I want to highlight is we've literally spent 10 minutes doing this. And normally when I work with people, this would be a few sessions before we can really nail down what their kind of 3 to 5 core values are. But looking at everything that you've done so far, looking at that list, which I'll put back on the screen in a second, looking at the themes that were coming up, the answers to your questions, just have a go at what you think 3 to 5 of your core values might be. And I would also love it if any of you would share them in the chat box as well, if you've got any that are coming up for you. Let me get that page back on the screen. Okay. So how can you use these? So I know that, you know, you're probably now thinking, okay, great, I know what some of my values are. You know, I've got impact, freedom, family, and status, but how does that link to what I actually want to do in my career? So this is when we're going to kind of have a look at your path. So have a look at your path so far, at jobs you've had so far, and have a look at the ladder that is in front of you. So I'm going to put another 3 questions up again for you to have a little think about. You're not necessarily going to come up with all the answers now, but it's just to sort of start to get the cogs whirling. So ask yourself these questions. Which job have you felt insert your value here, at the heart of your work? So looking again through some of the lists that some of you have said, which job have you really felt teamwork or impact, creativity, etc. at the heart of your work? It doesn't have to be a job. If it was, you know, at university you did a team project, or if it was just something outside of work, you know, if you've got a hobby and you really felt it in your hobby, feel free to write that down too. Secondly, what has insert your value here, looked like in your career path to date? So for example, creativity doesn't have to mean that you know, sit there drawing the whole time. Creativity can mean that you're able to come up with creative ideas. You know, something like family doesn't necessarily mean that you need to spend time with your family. It might be that you like to have that family feel of your team that you work with. Kind of how have these values shown up in your career path to date? And again, if you can't specifically think about your career path, just think about your life in general, you know, and your friendships and your relationships around you as well. And then finally, what could these values look like in the path that you're currently heading? So if you're at the, you know, beginning of your career and you have no idea what way to go, but you've got kind of a little idea as to where you might be going, maybe think about that one. Or if you're in a role at the moment, you know, you're already on a ladder, think about where that ladder's going and all these values and how they could potentially fit in with that future. Are there any there that you're thinking, yeah, absolutely, that can fit in with it? Are there any that you're thinking, oh, I'm not sure whether or not, you know, I'm going to get stability, or I'm going to get enough connection or creativity or something down that route? So have a little think about those questions. One thing that it's really important to remember with this is it doesn't have to be black and white. So again, kind of looking down at some of the examples that we've had. So if you had something like making a difference, if that was one of your core values, that doesn't mean that you need to quit your job and go off and become a counsellor. That just means that you need to find a way that in your current career you can include that value. So that might be mentoring different members of the team that are more junior, or it might be that you have a kind of hobby outside of work that ticks that box. It doesn't have to be really clear cut. It's just sort of how can you find these values in your career. So we'll come back a bit more to those later. Now we're going to look at the second thing, which is really important when working out what you want, and that is your why. So knowing why is essential for lasting success. So if you search YouTube for Start With Why, there's a TED talk by this Simon Sinek guy, and he basically explains that all great leaders start with a why, a passion, and a purpose. And if we know our why, it can help us to get clear on not only what we want from our future, but also it's likely to motivate us in order to achieve it. Because whenever we start losing motivation, we can go back to that point of, why am I doing this? So, for example, if you had a goal that was something like, I want to be a senior producer in the next 5 years, there might be all these different reasons as to why you actually want that. So it might be that you want to make more money so that you can see the world with 5 holidays a year. It might be that you want to be responsible for leading a team and mentoring junior people. It might be that you want to be able to make sure that your creative ideas are heard, that you're having an impact, that you're passionate about team culture, and you want to have a say in it. We're obviously doing this slightly backwards because you don't know what necessarily what you want yet. So what the aim now is to try and think about what your why is before you know what your what is. So it's to try and have a think about these things here and work out what your why is. So this next exercise, again, is just on your own to write down what you think your why is. And I'm going to give you a couple of minutes for that. It might be that you've got kind of one clear why that comes up, or it might be that you've got multiple different ideas that are popping into your mind. So just jot those down. Okay, so how is this relevant today and in the future? So often we find that we do things because society says we should do them. So we feel like, you know, we should be climbing a certain ladder, you know, we should be getting a promotion at this stage, that kind of thing. But when we're kind of basing our goals on something we feel like we should be doing, that's when we're much less likely to achieve them. And we're also less likely to be fit to feel happy and content once we have achieved them. So if instead of basing our goals on these reasons, our own personal whys, instead of because we feel we should be doing it because society says it, it's just going to lead us to having much happier goals and a much more kind of content outcome when you reach them. Another reason is there's something called sunk cost fallacy, which is essentially where you're hesitant to change your path because of the resources you've already put into it. So it might be that you think, oh, I spent X amount of years training in production, therefore it feels like a waste to go into editorial. But again, if you can go back to your why, it means that you're basing your future career goals on your actual reasons why, as opposed to on this idea of, oh, well, I've already spent X amount of, you know, years on it, therefore I can't change. So summarising sort of where we've got to in that first half of the workshop, we want to make sure that we're getting to know our values. We want to make sure that our goals are aligning with our values, and we want to get to know our why. Now, don't panic. So it's likely that you won't know all the answers yet. So that's why I asked you to pop 45 minutes in at the start of the session. So if you haven't done that yet, just put some time in to go back through, look at your values, have a think about your why, and really allow yourself to dedicate time to thinking about what it is that you might want internally. Second part of the workshop is about overcoming our mindset obstacles in order to get you what you want. So I saw this on Instagram the other day, and I thought that it was just like the perfect example of what goes on in our head a lot of the time. And I've got a quick quiz question. So the average person has 12,000 to 60,000 thoughts per day. What percentage of these thoughts do you think are negative? If you can pop your answers or your guesses in the chat box, that would be brilliant. So the actual answer is 80%. So 80% of our thoughts are negative. Next question. What percentage of these negative thoughts were the same negative thought as the day before? The answer is actually 95%. So just to summarize that, 80% of our thoughts are negative. 95% of these are the exact same negative thought that we had yesterday. Now, we know that, what study is that from? This is in my notes. Someone has just asked. It's the National Science Foundation that did that study. I don't know the exact name of the study, but if you Google that, it should come up. So we know that, new mindset means new results. If you think positive things will happen. We hear that kind of thing all the time, to the point that we're in this sort of toxic culture almost of positive vibes only, where, it's kind of being assumed that the reason we're not getting things is because our thoughts aren't positive enough and things like that. We know a new mindset equals new results. But how do we actually go about doing that? So as soon as you're in self-belief, you're in optimum state, you're most likely to be able to achieve what you want. So what we need to do, if you feel that there's something that you're thinking, that you're having a negative thought about, is to go through this process. So first of all, ask yourself, are you 100% certain this is true? So let's say if you thought, I'm not very good at briefing a team, so I'd struggle if I was any more senior. Are you 100% certain this is true? It might be that the answer is yes. It might be that you can say, in my last 2 meetings with my manager, they explained to me that my briefs weren't quite up to scratch, and they could do with a bit of work. So maybe the answer is yes. And if that's true, then you need to take action. And that's when you need to, practice doing the briefs, speak to your manager and get some feedback, do training, that kind of thing. But if you're not 100% certain, so if you're 98% certain, but you're not 100% certain that it's true, it's very, very likely that this is actually a mindset obstacle and not a true fact. So how do we challenge these mindset obstacles? This is my favourite slide of the presentation. This is my dog, Archie. This is a picture of him at 8 months old after he did his first ever agility class. So we got there and he looked a bit kind of nervous and anxious about going through these tunnels. He didn't really know what he was doing. He just looked a bit scared and wasn't really enjoying himself. So what I had to do was I had to give him encouragement. I had to say, come on, Archie, you can do it. Like jump over the hoop or whatever it was. I had to give him praise. When he did something, I had to say, well done, who's a good boy, really good job. I had to give him reward. He loves chicken. He got a whole handful of chicken anytime he did anything. And I had to give him positive reflection. So whenever he'd done anything, it wasn't that fun, like who's a good boy, really giving him this encouragement. By the end of the class, he absolutely loved it, to the point that I was sort of standing and talking to the instructor, and he was off in the field in the distance running through the hoops and jumping over the jumps because he just loved it so much. So my point here, this is relevant, is to learn to speak to yourself as if you're a puppy, and that's something that we really need to do. So this brings us on to exercise 3, which I'm not going to ask you to speak to each other like you're puppies. So if any of you are about to start panicking that that's going to be the exercise, don't worry. This is the final exercise, and what the idea of this is to help us give equal weighting to the positive and the negative thoughts in our mind. So it's not about positive vibes only think positively. It's about quieting down that 80% thought in our mind and allowing more space for those more self-believing thoughts to come in. So this exercise is a court case exercise. And what we're going to do is get into pairs. One person is going to be the judge and one person is going to be the lawyer. The lawyer states a negative belief that they have about themselves. Also, I should have said earlier as well, ideally, you'd go on camera and you chat to each other. But if that's not physically possible, then you could use the chat box. So don't worry if you physically can't come on camera, but it would be better if you can. So the lawyer states a negative belief they have about themselves. So say I'm the lawyer, I might say, I don't think that I'm good at presenting to large groups of people. The lawyer, so me again, then has to persuade the judge that this isn't true. So then I'd say, well, that's not true because I did a pitch to 30 people last week and we won the work. So I must be good at presenting to large groups of people. I did that presentation 3 months ago and I got really good feedback from my colleagues. So I must be good at presenting to large groups of people. So it's about you kind of thinking of something that is a negative belief about yourself and then challenging that as if you were a lawyer, kind of fighting that side in a court case. So we're going to pop you into pairs now and give you kind of 30 seconds to a minute to introduce yourselves, and then 2 minutes each person on playing that lawyer. 2 minutes might feel like a long time because when you're challenging your negative beliefs, you tend to can't think of kind of examples that come up. But just stick with it and think of however many you can in a full 2 minutes. This can be a really good exercise that you can try on your own at home, just as a journaling exercise. So you can kind of play the lawyer, defend those negative thoughts that start coming into your mind, and treat it as essentially like a journaling exercise. It can be a really worthwhile thing to do. So as we sort of come to the end of that second half of the workshop, the 3 things that I want you to take away from that is always ask yourself, is this 100% true? When you get those negative thoughts, is this 100% true? The next point is to give airtime to the positive thoughts too. It's not about ignoring those, negative beliefs. It's not about ignoring those negative thoughts. It's about allowing equal airtime to the positive, uplifting and true thoughts as well. And thirdly, to speak to yourself like you're a puppy. So to sort of summarise everything that we've been through for this last nearly 50 minutes, this is how that new cycle should start to look. So at the moment, you're kind of at that stage where you feel stuck in your career. You're now starting to look internally, go back through everything we've done today, spend some time looking internally on what it is that you might want, what your values are, what your why is. That will then enable you, when you go and looking externally, to be able to get answers that truly link to what you want and what fits your personality and your values. This will then allow you to set those career goals, which will really be in keeping with you and your personality. And now you've got some tools to be able to tackle that mindset to go and achieve those goals and be a happy face at the end. So before I do a Q&A, I just wanted to share my details. If there's anything that came up for you over this last 50 minutes that you want to ask me about and you don't want to ask about it on here, feel free to drop me an email. My Instagram is there, or my website. At the moment, if you go to my website, there's a free guide called How to Spend Your Time on Earth on there. And it's got some extra tips to help you kind of work out what it is that you want to do. So that might be relevant for you guys. I'm also, if you're interested in one-to-one coaching, I'm offering 10% off for the next week off any of the packages that are on my website. So have a look there as well. But that otherwise brings us to the end of the workshop. So does anyone have any questions? We've got sort of another few minutes if there's anything that you wanted to ask. And if there's anything TV specific, so I'm obviously kind of at that point of looking internally, but if there's anything externally, I know that we've got like Edie on the line who can help with TV specific questions. That's a good question. How do you actually first identify that you're feeling stuck? Sometimes I don't realise for a while. I think it's when you sort of start to get that feeling of sort of, is this it? Like, there must be more to life than this. Am I going down the right path? I think it's when you're kind of questioning yourself. And it might be that you ask your questions, and actually the answer is, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. I'm in the right place where I am now. But if you're asking yourself those questions and continually something doesn't feel completely right, and you're not completely sure on, you know, what direction you're going in, that's when it's worth then starting to kind of have a look at your values and have a look at you know, internally at where you're at, in order to help you to try and get not stuck. What do you do if you're currently doing some work that goes against some of your core values, e.g. you don't feel you're able to be organised enough and free with it, and it makes you unhappy at times, but you think it would be, that's a really good question, but you think it will turn into something which will really match all of your core values, and why in the future? So with this, I'd suggest it's about looking at both the short term and the long term. So if you feel that in the future it's going to match your core values, that's really positive, but you need to find a way to be matching your core values at the moment. So without knowing exactly what your core values are, it might be that you have something that can't quite fit into where you're working at the moment, but you might be able to find another way in order to be able to get this into your life. So maybe it's that you know, you have a hobby that gives you enough of that core value that you don't miss not having it in your work. Or it might be, so I'm just reading what you said. So it said, you don't feel you're able to be organised enough and free with it. So I'm not sure whether or not that specifically is your value, that organisation and that kind of feeling free. But it might be that you can, find a hobby externally, or it might be that there's a way, if you kind of reposition what that value might look like I kind of said earlier, it doesn't have to be black and white. So let's say if freedom is one of your core values and you're thinking, I'm working in production, you know, I'm never going to be able to work 2 days a week and leave at 4 o'clock and have that kind of freedom. But maybe that isn't the type of freedom that you need in order to sort of, you know, tick off that core value. Maybe freedom to you is having freedom to choose which program that you work on or something like that. Does that help answer your question? I've been told when I get rejected for a job that employers has gone for someone with more experience. That's annoying. But when I push for more feedback, I just get told that I have more appropriate skills. I've now been doing my role for 5 years. I'm really struggling to step up and keep telling myself that I'm not good enough. How do I get out of this mindset and believe I'm ready to be promoted? This is really difficult because obviously you're sort of facing that rejection that employers are giving you. So it's probably every time you get that, you're probably getting another knockback, another hit to your mindset. It makes it even harder to sort of have that you know, positive mindset that you're ready to be promoted. So what I would say here is it's a mixture of take that information as exactly what it was. So what your brain's doing is your brain is assuming I'm not getting this job because I'm not ready or not good enough. But actually the truth of the matter is they have picked someone else because they have got more experience and they want someone with more experience at that time. That is nothing against you or whether or not you're ready or your skills. That is just a fact as to what has happened in that moment. So try and kind of differentiate between what is the fact and what your mind has kind of blown that fact into. And another thing would be to keep an evidence bank to support the fact that you are ready and that you are good enough. So every time that you've got positive feedback from someone, write that down, you know, keep it in a notes section on your phone. Every time you do something that the outcome has been really successful and you're really proud of that outcome, take a note so that when you start to sort of feel this knocking confidence, you can go back to those notes and you can see all these times that you've got so much evidence to support the fact that you are ready to be promoted and that you are good enough. That's what it is. It's that sort of, again, allowing that equal weight, so allowing those positive thoughts in and giving space to them. Brilliant. I think then that is everything for today. So thank you so much for joining. Those that are left of you, I know that we had to have a few kind of drop out during that Q&A. If you've got any other questions or anything at all, then drop me a note, and if it's specific TV related, then I assume to drop Edie a note, or I'll forward it on to someone at RTS if it feels like it's sort of hitting that TV remit.